telling people our feelings.
We are, Rob, and we were talking about this last time, and we were talking about how that feeds into things like suppressing emotions, which tightens our diaphragm up and then sets us up for other problems. And part of that is an attitudinal thing, and we see it as wrong to show our emotions and to be emotional, right? Now, I think there's a distinction, and I'm trying to teach this to my son, between I have scraped my hands, right, and now I'm going to burst into tears, right? And I feel really sad about the fact that I've lost Teddy Dog, right? One is physical pain. I think it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of toughness against physical pain. You know, okay, he's only 3. We're training him for when he's 5 because he's got to go to school yet, right?
Yeah, right. He's got to meet somebody who's bigger than him.
Yeah, but I think emotional pain, you've got to learn to let it out, you know. I mean, I think I mentioned to you, nobody looks at Maori and go, wimpy race, you know. But Maori have it sorted on emotional pain. They let emotional pain out. In fact, I was just reading an article the other day on an assessment model for Maori called the Mahina model. Mahina model, probably said wrong. Very interesting stuff. But the chap who was like the progenitor of that was a chap called Mason Jury, really well known in mental health, particularly Maori mental health area. And he said the key element to understanding Maori mental health, and I think it's to understanding all health, frankly, is this model he calls Te Whare Tapa Whā, which is the 4 walls of the house, right? And the 4 walls are physical health, mental health, right? So your mind, spiritual health, and family, right? And I think that if you've got all those things going right with you, right, you don't have many problems. It's very rare you've got a problem. And if you have got a problem, it's one that medicine will probably deal with quite well because it likes things like that. But those other things all lead into functional disorder. And functional disorder is what sets us up for those deep emotional problems and for the chronic stuff, the gut stuff, the back stuff, the sleep stuff, the low energy. Those are all functional, usually in base.
I want to talk about the gut, as you put it, because you're an advocate for not eating a whole lot of different things that we live on.
I'm an advocate for some people not eating a whole lot of things that we live on, right? I mean, I've got my own little one. Mine's dairy, right? Love cream and I love cheese. And I like white wine, which for some reason somebody thought you should put dairy into.
What?
Yeah. If you check on the back of most white wine bottles, it'll contains dairy or egg. Or and egg sometimes, if you're really lucky, and if you're intolerant to both, you go, there
Sounds
goes.
like a meal all in itself.
I'll just have the wine. Yeah. White. Doesn't happen with reds, fortunately, but I think it's something to do with precipitating out the yeast, but I'm not sure of that. But it's quite a few people do have an intolerance to these foods, and that will show up mainly as a gut problem, and it will show up as back pain, and it will show up as atopic disorder.
Okay, what?
Asthma, eczema, hay fever, hives, right? It's a particular type of immune response involving immunoglobulin IgE.
And this is the body saying, I don't want you.
Well, I like to use, well, yes and no. It's a targeting issue, you know. If you've got asthma, eczema, hay fever, it's a targeting issue. Why are you attacking body tissue? Doesn't seem like a logical thing to be doing, right? Unless it's cancer, then it's a very good idea. And it's a targeting issue, and I use the analogy of terrorism, right? Because it's the way I think.
One day I know that people can understand that, though, John.
But if you were thinking, let's say we have some Egypt come into the middle of a mall, blow himself up, right? Kill 20 people, right? Maim another 40, right? We think, that's not good. Then it happens somewhere else. We go, okay, now it's serious. So then we stick all these people on the borders, checking them coming in, right? Everybody is listening to your telephone calls and reading your emails. Spot checks, all of this stuff, and all of this people who used to be involved in industrial and economic production are now tied up doing this bureaucratic administrative security stuff. Consequence, we catch people before they blow themselves up a mall. Good thing, right? Downside, all of that function is now taken away, and so in the immune system the equivalent is you have a food intolerance. Because there's an evolutionary advantage in allowing us to eat a food that we normally couldn't eat, because in a famine that would have been useful, right? So we have this capacity to suppress that immune function that's associated with the intolerance. The downside of it is it uses a huge amount of immune function, and other immune things don't work well. Hence your atopic disorders flare up. So I would say to everyone, even if they don't want to come and see me and get tested for foods, scratch tests I think are a waste of time, frankly. I've got my own voodoo way of doing it and it's much more reliable, just my opinion. But if you've got a kid, say, who's got asthma, eczema, hay fever, straight off take them off gluten, dairy, eggs and soy, maybe corn, right? Give them 2 weeks of absolute withdrawal, right?
Just protein.
No, well, all of those contain proteins, and it's usually the proteinaceous component of them that causes the problem. But you take them off those foods, and if their intolerance improves, keep them off for a good month, and then introduce one at a time, and see if you get a flare-up. Now, that's the way to test it if you don't want to do it our way. And don't be scared about that causing some sort of nutritional deficiency with calcium or whatever. Almonds have got plenty of calcium in it. Meat's got calcium in it, you know. Eat sardines, the bones inside them, full of calcium and phosphorus. Same with your tinned salmon. There's plenty of ways to get calcium back in your diet. But it's like your terrorist situation, right? If you haven't had an attack for a long time, then the government goes, oh, well, this is all very expensive. We don't really seem to need it, and IS are gone now anyway. So we'll dismantle all that. If you then have the food, after you've dismantled it all, you'll get a really severe gutsache because you haven't got the protective mechanism in place. So, and if you have a little bit of the food all the time, right, the body won't dismantle the immune protective function. So either give it up or don't bother. Cutting back is a complete waste of time, right?
John, thank you very much indeed.